The day Rebecca Collins fired Michael Turner, she didn't even look up from her glass office desk. Outside her window, the Chicago skyline shimmered in cold silver light, and inside, a man who had given 9 loyal years to her company stood with his hands trembling at his sides. He had asked for one single day off. One day. And it cost him everything. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of single parents, take a moment right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us why compassion still matters. Michael had never missed a deadline. He had never been late. In 9 years at Collins and Bright Financial Group, he had worked holidays, covered for sick coworkers, and stayed long after the cleaning crew turned off half the lights. His coworkers joked that the office would collapse without him, but no one knew the real reason he pushed himself so hard. Every evening after clocking out, he rushed home to a small brick apartment in Aurora, Illinois, where his 7-year-old daughter Sophie waited by the window. Sophie had soft brown curls and wide eyes that seemed too big for her fragile body. She had been diagnosed with a congenital heart condition at age 4. Since then, hospital visits had become part of their normal life. Michael's wife, Hannah, had passed away shortly after Sophie's diagnosis, leaving him to carry the weight of fatherhood alone. Rebecca, on the other hand, had inherited her father's empire at 32. Tall, sharp-featured, and relentlessly driven, she had taken Collins and Bright from stable to aggressive expansion within 2 years. Her leadership style was simple, performance over everything. She believed emotion clouded judgment. Weakness cost money. So when Michael requested a single unpaid day off to take Sophie to a critical cardiology appointment at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in downtown Chicago, Rebecca saw only inconvenience. It was the busiest quarter of the fiscal year. Investors were watching. Her father, Thomas Collins, the billionaire founder of the company, had recently stepped back from daily operations, but still monitored everything closely. Rebecca felt constant pressure to prove she deserved the CEO title. The morning Michael walked into her office, he carried medical documents in a worn folder. His voice shook as he explained that the appointment could determine whether Sophie needed surgery. He promised to work overnight shifts to compensate. He even offered to forego his salary for the day. Rebecca didn't hear her father. She heard risk. She heard disruption. She told him that commitment meant showing up when it was inconvenient. She told him everyone had personal problems. And then, without meeting his eyes, she terminated his employment for failure to prioritize company needs. Michael didn't argue. He simply nodded, collected his things in a cardboard box, and walked out of the building that had been his second home for nearly a decade. For the first time in 9 years, he was unemployed. The next day, he still took Sophie to her appointment. They rode the train into the city, Sophie clutching her stuffed rabbit while Michael forced a smile to hide his fear. The cardiologist spoke carefully about test results, about potential procedures, about costs that made Michael's stomach twist. Without insurance from his job, the numbers felt impossible. That afternoon, as he exited the hospital cafeteria with Sophie after buying her a small bowl of soup, something unexpected happened. Across the room, seated at a quiet corner table, was Thomas Collins. The Thomas Collins. The 80-year-old billionaire who had built Collins and Bright from a tiny accounting firm into a financial powerhouse. Michael recognized him immediately from company newsletters and framed portraits in the lobby, but what stunned him more was that Thomas was looking directly at him. Thomas's eyes softened as he noticed Sophie's pale face. He gestured for Michael to come over. Hesitant, unsure whether to feel embarrassed or hopeful, Michael approached. He expected a brief, polite exchange. Instead, Thomas asked him to sit. Michael didn't know that Thomas had been watching him for years while Rebecca ran operations. Thomas occasionally visited incognito, observing employees from afar. He had seen Michael stay late countless times. He had overheard coworkers praise his integrity. He had once watched Michael quietly pay for a junior employee's lunch when that employee had forgotten his wallet. Thomas believed character mattered more than quarterly profits. As they sat in the hospital cafeteria, Michael didn't complain about losing his job. He didn't criticize Rebecca. He simply explained Sophie's condition in a tired but steady voice. He admitted he didn't know how he would afford surgery if it became necessary. but he said he would figure it out. Fathers always did. Thomas listened in silence, studying the man who had just been fired by his own daughter. 2 days later, Rebecca received a call from her father requesting she join him for dinner at Gibson's Steakhouse in downtown Chicago. He rarely summoned her like this. Curious and slightly anxious, she arrived promptly, dressed in a navy business suit. When she entered the private dining room, her confidence faltered. Michael Turner was seated beside Thomas. He wasn't wearing his usual office attire. Instead, he wore a simple gray blazer, freshly pressed but clearly inexpensive. Sophie wasn't there, she was resting at home. But Michael sat upright, respectful, clearly uncomfortable. Rebecca felt heat rise in her chest. She didn't understand. Thomas gestured for her to sit. His expression was calm but firm, the way it had been when she was a child, and he was about to teach her something important. Throughout dinner, Thomas asked Michael about his career, about his management ideas, about what he believed the company could improve. Rebecca listened in disbelief as Michael spoke intelligently about internal efficiency, employee morale, and client retention strategies. He offered thoughtful suggestions he had never dared present before, fearing overstepping his role. Rebecca realized she had never truly seen him. To her, he had been an employee ID number tied to performance metrics. Then Thomas turned to Rebecca and asked why she had fired one of the most loyal men in the company for requesting a single day in 9 years. Rebecca tried to defend her decision using logic and policy. She spoke about discipline, precedent, maintaining standards, but her words felt hollow in the quiet room. Thomas's voice remained steady as he reminded her that leadership wasn't about fear. It was about understanding the human cost behind business decisions. He told her that when he built the company decades ago, he knew every employee's family name. He had attended weddings and funerals. That loyalty had built the empire she now managed. Rebecca looked at Michael for the first time not as a liability but as a father. She imagined Sophie in that hospital gown. Something inside her shifted. A week later, an internal memo was sent to every employee at Collins and Bright Financial Group. It announced a revised family leave policy, expanded health benefits, and the creation of an employee assistance fund for medical emergencies. At the bottom of the memo was a new appointment, Michael Turner, Director of Operations and Employee Relations. Rebecca had personally visited Michael's apartment in Aurora to offer him the position. She apologized, not with corporate language, but with sincerity. She admitted she had lost sight of what truly mattered. She offered full medical coverage reinstated immediately, including comprehensive support for Sophie's upcoming treatment. Michael accepted, not out of pride, but out of hope. Months later, Sophie successfully underwent heart surgery at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Rebecca visited during recovery, bringing books and a stuffed bear. The once intimidating CEO sat beside a little girl's hospital bed, listening as Sophie described her dream of becoming a teacher someday. The company's culture began to change. Productivity didn't drop, it improved. Employees felt valued, turnover decreased, profits quietly rose, not from fear-driven pressure, but from renewed loyalty. Rebecca learned that strength and compassion were not opposites, and Michael learned that sometimes the worst day of your life can become the doorway to something better. Before we close this story, I want to ask you something important. If Michael's journey moved you even a little, please comment "Second chances matter" below. Let's fill the comments with hope and remind single parents everywhere that their sacrifices are seen. Because in the end, it wasn't the billionaire father who changed everything. It was a little girl with a fragile heart and a man who refused to give up on her. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps spread messages of kindness, resilience, and compassion to millions more who need them. Some leaders learn through success, others learn through mistakes, but the greatest leaders learn through empathy. And sometimes, it takes losing everything for a single day to finally see what truly matters.